Hello, football fans. Here we go. 5 months after the Toronto Argonauts won the 100th Grey Cup, 3 weeks away from training camp, 8 weeks away from the new season, this is where it all begins. It is D-Day. It is Draft Day. It is Dream Day for so many young football players who await their name to be heard today. We've got a lot of coverage for you. We draft very well. I'm Rod Black, along with the draft. We don't call him guru around here. We call him draft god. Dwayne Ford, former head coach Paul LaPolice, and of course Schultz, Chris Schultz.
Righty.
Here we go. Guys, this, every time we come around here to this time of year, we always talk about a prohibitive number one or a draft where there are a few runaways. Not the case right now.
Yeah, not so much. I think you've got a guy in Lyndon Gadosh who is a prohibitive number one regardless of who ultimately ends up with that pick. But then you've got some of the draft factors coming into play, and the ones that are most important or most prominent in this particular draft are the players who are redshirt juniors going back to school in the States for another year, as well as a number of guys who have signed NFL contracts, and that creates a little bit of uncertainty for the CFL teams. Now, one draft factor that is a constant from year to year is how teams choose to deploy that ratio, Paul.
Absolutely, Dwayne. And one of the things you have to have an understanding of is where these non-imports play. I did a study of 2 weeks in the middle of the season and talked about where these players are position-wise are going to line up. The defensive line, the linebackers and the defensive backs, you can see these are the non-import starters. The Sam linebacker we took out because he's more of a defensive backs. Now, and if any of the dads here want their sons to make sure they can play in the Canadian Football League, the punters, kickers, and long snappers, 92%.
Don't say that to Schultz.
The highest percentage in the league. Heading over to offensive line where the majority of non-imports play 73%. Okay, you have about 2 receivers playing on each team, and the running backs at this time, it's really great that you have 2 starters in the running back position. So today, if you think that 15 defensive backs are going to be taken, that's probably not going to happen, Chris.
Well, Paul, let me talk about those percentages you articulated, because here's the bottom line about the Canadian Football League. You're going to start 7 Canadians on your football team. And if your 7 Canadians are better than everybody else's 7 Canadians, you'll be better than every other team in the Canadian Football League. And I will guarantee you regular season success. Can I guarantee you playoff success? No. Just ask the BC Lions that were beat by Calgary in the West Final. Just ask the Toronto Argonauts that did beat Calgary because they were better on that day. But my point is, you cannot undervalue how important today is, because those 7 Canadians make or break your team.
That's why we call it the Canadian Football League. That's what it's all about. And to help us decipher some of the analytics and some of the players that we're going to see today from the CIS ranks, from the NCAA ranks, we're awaiting the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who will select number 1 overall. We have a great panel of coaches behind me, headed up by Dave Naylor. Dave?
Thanks, Rod. Well, the players have been through the workouts at the Combine. They've done their interviews. They're ready, and the coaches we have here know them very well. I'm going to introduce Brian Dobie, the University of Manitoba, Steph Potasic of McMaster, and Danny Machocha. You remember him from his days in Edmonton in the CFL in Montreal. He is now the head coach at the University of Montreal. Guys, give me a player that you're curious about today to see where he's going to go in today's draft. Danny?
A young man who's going to have a future in the CFLs by the name of Sidhu Junior Hedera from the University of Laval. He's an impact player as far as what he can do for you on offense. He can play multiple positions. He'll line up as a receiver, he'll line up as a fullback, and he'll also line up in some tight end sets. He's able to block, he'll catch the football, he'll get you some yak yards downfield, and clearly he's able to dominate on all 4 special teams. So he's got a bright future and a force to be reckoned with here in the next little while.
Yeah, and he's causing some flashbacks for Steph Potasic when he looks at that Vanier Cup film. Steph, give us the player you're looking at today and curious about.
I absolutely agree with Schultz that if you're looking for the Magic 7, a starter, an impact player right away, you got to look at that chart that Coach LaPolice put up, and O-line's the best place to start. And I think of the O-linemen in this year's class, there's a McMaster Marauder by the name of Matt Sewell. We call him Big Bear, 6'8", 335 pounds. That's an impact player and someone that's going to make a difference early in his career. 4-year starter, 4-year all-star. One of the most dominant players at any position in the Ontario Football Conference.
Now, he was your starting left tackle. He is signed with the NFL's Tennessee Titans. Sometimes guys go down there for a mini camp. They're back very quickly. How long a look? What's the sense you get of how long he may be down in the NFL?
I think Matt's pretty unique at 335 pounds and 6'8". He's light on his feet. It's not easy to say. You don't see it very often. I think his athleticism, he's going to get a fair shot and a good look at Tennessee, and the CFL is something he's always aspired to and he would be excited to get back to, but he's going to exhaust that opportunity first.
Brian Dobie, give us a player you're looking at today.
I'm looking over to University of Calgary. They're loaded in talent over there with obviously Lyndon Gaydosh and Steve Limbala, their tailback. But the guy that I'm looking to go early in the draft is Mike Edom. Mike Edom's a will linebacker, and he plays in that Calgary blitzing defense. He comes off the edge real hard, but he's remarkable in terms of his ability to cover the field. He'll drop back into a cover 2 look, and he gets out of there in a hurry. And I'll tell you what, I think in this year's draft, the best defensive back you're going to see going is a linebacker. I think that's Mike Edom, a will linebacker, and you're going to see him playing free safety in the CFL.
It's one of those things we often see, guys switching positions as they go from university football to the pros. Rod, back to you.
All right, thanks very much. We've got lots of coverage, as mentioned. 2 hours here on TSN, rounds 1 and 2, and then rounds 3 to 7 on tsn.ca. 60 players to be named, 7 rounds of coverage, and in the intrigue is the Ottawa franchise, yet to be named, Red Blacks, yet to be named, and will be up and running, of course, in 2014. They also have 4 selections in the draft. And with more on today's draft, pleased to be joined once again by the Commissioner of the Canadian Football League, Mark Cohan.
Thanks, Rod. Draft day is a huge day for our league. For our teams, the road to Grey Cup 101 this November in Regina starts right here. And for some very talented elite athletes from across Canada, their CFL careers begin today. So let's get started. Hamilton, you're now officially on the clock.
Kent Austin, new general manager, head coach of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, will make his first selection as the boss of the Ticats. Is that going to be Lyndon Gaydosh?
As long as the Hamilton Tiger Cats hold on to this pick, I think Lyndon Gaydosh is the guy who makes a lot of sense for this team. When you look at the Tiger Cats, some people may think that they can avoid going defensive tackle because they've got guys in their pipeline. Michael Atkinson from Boise State, Hassan Hazime from Wake Forest. They signed Brian Bulkey in free agency. To me, I'm thinking big picture. You've got an opportunity long-term if you draft Gaydosh and get those other guys signed. You can potentially play 2 Canadians inside if that happens.
You know, Dwayne, here's what I think about the Hamilton Ticats. I mean, their defensive football team not only struggled, I mean, it struggled incredibly last year. You have 8 top categories on offense and defense. The Ticats were dead last in 6 of the 8 categories. Nobody scored more points against a football team than the Ticats, and they were 7th in another. So, I mean, let's have some logic here. I know they did the free agency thing. I know they got Shamari Williams and all the rest of that. But, man, get some Canadian talent, build that up. Ken Austin, I'm not telling you what to do, but I guess I am telling you what to do. Draft the best Canadian available and change the defense.
Always telling the coach what to do.
Yeah. Well, we should welcome Kent Austin back to the league. We've missed him for a while, and he will make his first big move as the GM of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. What that will be, there's the war room as our coverage kicks off here on TSN of the CFL Draft.
Too many turnovers.
That pass is intercepted. Not going to get caught. Inside the 5. Touchdown.
It's all over now.
It's only a matter of days until Kent Austin is announced as the Hamilton Tiger Cats' new head coach and general manager.
For me, this opportunity continued to grow.
He's the perfect guy to have in here in a year like this.
The one thing when you have the first pick in the draft means you didn't have the year you wanted a year ago, but that's the prize. First overall, the CIS coaches panel, I want to know from you guys, if you had that first pick, who would you be taking today? Brian Doby.
Lyndon Gaydosh. It's an easy choice.
Defensive lineman, University of Calgary.
Absolutely. He's a beast. You know, I'll tell you, last year at the East-West Bowl, I've coached against him for the last few years, of course, with the University of Calgary. He's been a load. But I saw him come into East-West Bowl last year, walked up to him right away and went, wow, what have you done? He changed his body around. He dropped weight, added muscle in the right place, and he can move. His lateral movement is outstanding. He can sack the quarterback. He can defend the run. He's the guy I'd go with, definitely.
Steph, if you had the pick today?
Hard to argue with Coach Doby on that one. I think Lyndon is the best 2-gap football player in the country. He only has 1 sack this year. That's because he's not interested in going by the O-lineman. He's interested in beating them up, and once he gets a hold of them, he controls them and can flow to the ball either way. That kind of trench warfare, I think, ready to play early in his career and can make an impact, especially with the Tiger Cats wanting some defensive personnel.
Up front, yeah, Danny Machochi, where would you like to go and pick one?
Well, I guess it's unanimous because I like Gaidosh also for many different reasons. One, he's available right now. You know, he will be in camp. He's a potential ratio changer. And the worst case scenario, he'll be in a rotation where he'll give you 15 to 20 quality snaps a game. And this is a must, I would think, for Hamilton right now. So logically, that's where I would be headed.
A safe pick with lots of upside. Lyndon Gaidosh, it is unanimous from our panel. Rod, back to you.
All right, and again, we haven't heard any word of a trade coming from Hamilton. The commissioner is ready. Here it is, the first overall pick.
Thanks, Rod. With the first overall pick in the 2013 CFL Draft, the Hamilton Tiger Cats select from the University of Calgary, defensive lineman Lyndon Gaidosh.
Lyndon Gaidosh is the #1 pick of the 2013 draft. He is a beast off the end. Dwayne Ford, you're not surprised?
No, not a bit. Lyndon Gaidosh is a guy who played defensive end for the Calgary Dinos last season, played out of position because, despite being over 300 pounds, he had the athleticism to move from defensive tackle to the edge. This is a guy who has a terrific resume. The CIS Rookie of the Year in 2009, and he has maintained that level to consider that he is still at the top of this class 4 years later, the best player on the field at the CFL Combine a few weeks ago. A terrific pick for the Tiger Cats. As I said, I think this long-term gives them some ratio flexibility.
Hamilton Tiger Cats take him. Is he ready right now?
He's as ready as anybody in this draft to step in and play.
You know, when I watched the film of this kid, the first 3 plays I watched, he took the center and he threw him out of the way and made the play on the ball carrier. This is a kid who's athletic, who plays with a good motor. I think he's going to move inside and he's going to be a force. You know, he'll be a rotational starter to start, but I think in a year he could probably ratio change and start on the inside full time.
Well, here's the thing. Hamilton Ticats had 6 wins and they had 12 losses. By no means a successful year, but when you look at Henry Burris, the amount of touchdown passes he threw, you look at the fact that they were the #1 punt return team in the Canadian Football League, Chris Williams. Those 2 phases of their team are pretty doggone good. They have to eliminate the 2 and outs because they had too many of those. But if you find a young, good defensive tackle, he has to have a mentor or 2, and he will find it with the Hamilton Ticats. It's a solid pick, a foundational pick. That's how you win. You take care of the foundation.
So Kent Austin makes that selection for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. They have picked Lyndon Gaidosh, #1 overall. We'll hear from the Cats. We'll hear from Lyndon. What an exciting day it must be for a young man, a big young man, from Peace River, Alberta. Unbelievable for him today. Winnipeg, you are on the clock. The Blue Bombers will select next when we come back as our CFL Draft continues. For all the latest news, video highlights, and stats from around the CFL, go to CFL.ca, and you can get the gear at the CFL.shop.ca. Get the latest CFL team merchandise, including CFL Reebok sideline gear and draft caps at CFLshop.ca. Do your shopping right here. Lyndon Gaidosh is the #1 selection in the 2013 CFL Draft. He is now a member of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and the big D lineman joins us now. Lyndon, congratulations.
All right, thank you.
Where are you today?
I'm back at home in Peace River.
What is Peace River? The Peace River's off the charts today, knowing that one of their own is now in the CFL and also the #1 selection overall.
Yeah, I just actually got off the phone with the local newspaper right now.
Oh, nice. Dwayne Ford is with us. Dwayne?
Lyndon, congratulations, first of all. I know you spent a little bit of time in Hamilton meeting with the Ticats brass. What feeling did you get in terms of how you're going to fit into this organization?
Well, I got a good read there on the coaches and that, and I really like them. I got the feeling that they really like me, and I hope I'm able to do some things in Hamilton this year.
You had a terrific combine as well, Lyndon, and you've been with the UFC and the Dinos for a while. Every time we've talked to you, you've always been so seemingly overwhelmed by just being in certain situations. What does it feel like now to know that you're going to wear the Hamilton Tiger Cats uniform?
I don't know. I can't really think of any good words to describe it.
Now, Lyndon, I know that you're a guy who has said, ever since being, first of all, Rookie of the Year in the CIS 4 years ago, it was important to you to go first overall in this draft. What's the next goal or the next motivation?
well, the next goal is to get on the field and show everyone what I can do now.
Lyndon, what are you going to do to celebrate?
I'm going to go and crack a beer. I got a couple sitting on the table waiting for me.
Oh, that's what we love about you. Lyndon Gaydosh, congratulations. You're the #1 pick in the CFL Draft.
Thank you very much.
Lyndon Gaydosh. There's the countdown for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. 30 seconds to go. Canadian content. You can see what they have. What do they need, Dwayne Ford?
Well, overall, this is a team that needs some depth, and I think you look particularly over the course of the last couple of years, what the changes that have occurred with this team. They need to add a little bit of depth on that defensive line, and it's no surprise to anybody to know that they looked at trying to move up to that #1 overall selection. But this is a draft that's deep in D linemen. They still have an opportunity to possibly make a move at that spot.
Yeah, and I think one of the areas they need to is, with the loss of Kashamo not being re-signed, I think a defensive end would be, somebody who can play on the edge is going to make sense here. They got Jake Thomas, who's a good interior young player, but I think a guy off the edge would be good for him.
In terms of improving their Canadian talent, they're not that far away. I want to talk about the Mwamba effect. Middle linebacker, Enoch Mwamba, he moved in so well and played so good at the middle linebacker. Now they got Koshi as the free safety. They just need one more Mwamba. They're on their way.
The brothers Mwamba.
Yeah,
they made a lot of changes in the offseason. And again, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers looking to improve. What will they do here with the 2nd overall selection? Once again, Commissioner Mark Cohan.
Thanks, Rod. With the overall pick in the 2013 CFL Draft, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers select from Eastern Michigan University defensive lineman Andy Mulamba.
Oh, Schultze, you wanted a Mwamba.
So close.
One letter off.
You got a Mwamba.
Andy Mulamba, a guy who's been a 4-year starter at Eastern Michigan. He started off as a linebacker there as a freshman, made his way up onto the defensive line, playing the defensive end spot. This is a guy whose NFL stock rose, and he's under contract right now to the Green Bay Packers, but he was terrific in a game head-to-head with the NFL Draft's #1 overall pick, Central Michigan offensive tackle Eric Fisher. That put him on the radar. Terrific athlete. And as you said, this is a guy who, provided he's eventually going to show up in Winnipeg, is going to give them an opportunity to change that ratio, playing a legitimate Canadian player at that defensive end position, guys.
Yeah, a kid with long arms, lean. I thought he played the run very well, threw people out of the way to make the play. I think he's got to get a little bit better versus the pass, but he's certainly going to be somebody who can go in, Schultze, and play 12 to 15 snaps a game, and then he's going to make some plays on teams.
And support your quarterback, because Winnipeg was dead last in points scored. Now, is that the offensive line, the receivers, the running back? No, it's a quarterback issue, and it's a quarterback health issue. So if you're going to take a player to support that player, I think it's the perfect pick, because they're not that far away from turning it around based on the Canadian talent on that side of the ball. He's not a Mwamba, he's a Lamumba. That's as close as you can get.
It's going to be tough for the PA announcer.
Oh, my God. It's tough for me.
Yeah. Mwamba. Again, I asked you this before about being ready. And I can't remember the last time 2 D linemen went 1-2 in the CFL Draft, but you're the guru. We'll have to find that out the way this has worked out. Certainly, everybody talked about the prizes being D linemen in this draft.
Yeah, well, I think what you're looking at is a little bit of a trend here in the Canadian Football League. Over the last 2 years, defensive line has been the marquee position in the last 2 CFL drafts, and so you're starting to see teams recognize that. The last 2 drafts haven't been as strong as at receiver, which Paul demonstrated as a traditional Canadian position. You got to look at how you're going to best work the ratio, and you've got a couple of draft classes coming in very deep at the defensive line position. You're seeing teams, potentially Hamilton, and now clearly Winnipeg, looking at possibly changing their ratio a little bit to use another Canadian D line.
Yeah, and hats off to the strength coaches in CIS, because a lot of these kids are getting stronger and being good guys who can step in and play right away.
Another one of the top-ranked D linemen, Stephon Charles, who is now up there as well. He could possibly go on. Again, he was signed recently, but you never know how far he could dip into the draft or perhaps be elevated. Montreal picks next. They have the 3rd overall pick, and again, they have 2 picks in the 1st round, as Jim Popp normally likes to do. He's got a lot of Canadian talent, including Shea Emery, of course, and others, and might we see some more D linemen, maybe an O lineman. Matt Sewell is available. We'll find out next. Montreal Alouettes, you are now officially on the clock, and this Alouette team made some changes in the offseason. Biggest one, head coach Dan Hawkins takes over from Mark Trestman, who is now in the National Football League. Dwayne Ford, what did the Montreal Alouettes look for here?
Well, the retirement of J.P. Bakaziak suggests that this is a team that could use a little bit of help on the defensive line as well. They're a little thin there. They've got guys who are defensive ends, but not a guy who can play on the interior in that rotation. That's one place they may look. You know, I mean, there is the possibility as well for this team looking elsewhere on their defense. They've got some depth in terms of Canadian linebackers, possibly the secondary here.
First two picks have been D linemen. What will the Alouettes do with pick number 3? Once again, here's the commissioner.
Well, here we go. With the 3rd overall pick, the Montreal Alouettes select from the University of Calgary, linebacker Mike Edom.
Whoa. 3 D guys in a row. Mike Edom is selected 3rd overall. 2 dinos selected in the first 3 picks. Blake Nill has to be pretty happy right now.
Or he might be cringing at the thought of losing 2 of his best defensive players. Brian Dobie's back there smiling from ear to ear right now, though. Mike Edom, as Brian talked about off the top, one of the best athletes in this draft. He was a guy who stood out, I think, for a number of people at the Canadian Football League Combine. You know, in that 195, 200-pound range, runs extremely well, can get involved in your blitz package. This is a guy who, for a team like Montreal, has the potential to be a ratio change guy. But I think for any team, he's one of those guys. Schulte talked about getting that great 7, your 7 Canadian starters. Mike Edom's one of those guys. You find a way to get him on the field.
So, Mike Edom, you are the 3rd selection overall by the Montreal Alouettes. Let's go to Dave Naylor and the coaches.
Well, Mike Edom was the player that Brian Dobie, head coach at the University of Manitoba, said he was most curious about. You got your answer. He goes 3rd overall. He's going to have to make a position switch, you think, in the Canadian Football League from linebacker to defensive back. What does a player need to do to be able to do that at the pro level?
Well, I'm first going to answer that by addressing what Dwayne Ford said earlier. Yes, we are glad that he's the number 3 pick, and those Calgary guys are getting drafted out of Canada West real quick. He's a great football player. He's already moved. When he came into Calgary, Blake Nill did a great job moving him down to will linebacker. So he's coming off the edge. He's a physical player. But you watch what he does sometimes. He'll be lined up at the line of scrimmage. They'll drop him off deep into a cover 2 look, and he's the deepest guy on the field. He has range. So I think he's custom made already with the work that he's done at Calgary, athletically to move to free safety, make the conversion, and he's going to be an automatic impact right now on special teams.
Steph Tatasek, you saw him in the national semifinal. What do you think of his versatility?
He's unique, guys. Most linebackers don't have all 3 areas of their game at the highest level. Their ability to stop the run, their ability to play the pass, and their ability to get after the quarterback. This young man can do all 3 at the highest level. He caused fits. He's got such range in the pass game. I do think it's a natural fit to maybe move to the secondary. Caused us fits in our short side game. He just seemed to be everywhere. It didn't matter whether we were running or passing.
Another popular choice. Rod, back to you.
You can see Dwayne Ford's top 10 right now. You a little surprised, Dwayne, by what you're seeing so far?
I'm really not shocked. I mean, we knew that Mike Edom was going to be one of the top guys in this draft. We knew it was going to be heavy on defense.
Saskatchewan, you are on the clock with pick number 4. Lyndon Gadosh went 1. Andy Malumbo went 2. Mike Edom 3. 2 dinos selected in the first 3. Now Saskatchewan, you are on the clock for selection number 4 in the 2013 CFL Draft. What up, Dwayne Ford?
Well, you look at the Saskatchewan Roughriders, one of the things that I look at with this team is adding a little bit of youth and depth on their offensive line. They lost a couple of young offensive linemen, Matt O'Donnell in a trade with Edmonton last season, Alex Krosnick-Grove through free agency this year. I think this is a team that would like to add a little bit of depth at that spot somewhere along the way in this draft.
You know, one thing I'd like to talk about is I thought they did a great job last year signing Ricky Foley. Ricky Foley is somebody who I don't know if he's in their plans to start, but he certainly should be in a rotation to play 15 to 20 snaps a game. In a pinch, he could start for you, but it frees up the designated import, and that's what a lot of GMs are looking to do. How can I free up designated imports to play at other spots? Because certainly if the Canadian's going to be playing 15 to 20 snaps, you're going to have a free up of the DI at another spot.
Well, here are the names that really jump out at happy with the Canadian content with Saskatchewan. Craig Butler, free safety. Sam Hurl as a linebacker. They're also great cover guys. We know about Heenan on the offensive line, but Ricky Foley's a Canadian defensive end. That's a rarity. Most defensive linemen that are Canadian are on the interior. Now, in football, there's a 100% guarantee you're going to be injured. So all of a sudden, there's this abstract pressure on Ricky Foley to play every single game, because then you got to start juggling the ratio, moving people here and moving people there. He's a good player. He's in a system that fits him. Yeah. But I think they have to find another Canadian defensive end to either develop or in a pinch, go in and play effectively.
You talked about injury, Schulte, and another thing that's come that I hope he comes back because I love him is Rob Baggs coming off an injury, and hopefully he gets a chance to play because he was a very productive player for them the last couple
I think it should be said, you know, and you see Dwayne Ford in the rankings, and maybe some perspective should be drawn because you hear about Steph Charles from the University of Regina, very close. You hear about Matt Sewell. You hear about some of these other players who have also signed NFL deals, and that puts things into a little different perspective as well for these teams.
Well, it changes everything because teams are looking for guys in the early part of this draft, guys who are going to be here right away, guys who are going to be in training camp, and so that's why when you look at the rankings, whether it's the rankings that I've created, whether it's the Canadian Scouting Bureau rankings, that's the reason why you're seeing some of those guys slip down a little bit later and other guys climb in this draft, is because teams are picking basically the best players who are going to be there immediately.
If you were Brendan Taman right now, who do you take?
Well, I'm not, fortunately, but my pick in this spot, I know Mike Edom was a guy they liked. Schultz alluded to Craig Butler playing at the free safety spot. I could see them going after an offensive lineman, a guy like Corey Wattman in this spot.
Okay, let's see. Here's the commissioner. The pick is in. We are ready for selection number 4 from Saskatchewan.
Okay, Rider Nation, here we go. With the 4th overall pick, the Saskatchewan Roughriders select from Eastern Michigan University, offensive lineman Corey Wattman.
All right. Dwayne Ford, GM.
Psychic.
Interesting to note, 4 picks, 2 teams so far. You know, two schools, basically, that have given these 4 picks.
Great point, yeah.
Very interesting.
Well, and Corey Wattman, part of that great Canadian recruiting class at Eastern Michigan, Kalonji Kashama, another Canadian from Eastern Michigan we expect to see drafted today. But what I love about Wattman, this is a guy who's been a starter at the Division I level. You believe that he's going to be ready to step in and play relatively soon. He may have the limitation of probably only playing center, maybe able to play guard a little bit, but you've got a guy with a high football IQ, absolutely tough as nails, comes from a great high school football program up at Huron Heights, just north of the city of Toronto. They're going to love this guy in Saskatchewan. Reminds me of an old teammate of mine in Schultz. He's Carl Coulter.
Carl Coulter, he's a guy that played consistently. He was also a guy that played consistently through injury. More than anything else, you have to have 6 offensive linemen. You have your 5 starters. That's pretty well set with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. But that 6th guy must have quality about him. So when you pick him young, you develop him. As fast as he can, he has to develop to that level where he can play 18 games.
And you talk about 6 guys, Schultz. Ben Heenan was drafted last year by the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Number 1 overall.
That gives this team a lot of depth, and hopefully they can push to start and possibly 5 down the road. I think this kid does a great job of run blocking. I think he's got to get. He's going to be moved into center. You know, he doesn't have the longest arms, but I think he's going to be a very good player in this league.
Well, we'll see. Again, Ben Heenan went number 1 overall. They got another offensive lineman with the number 4 selection so far. 2 Calgary Dinos and 2 players from Eastern Michigan have been selected through 4 picks. Our first player off the board as an O-lineman, Corey Wattman, selected number 4. Montreal back on the clock for the 5th pick next.
I think it's okay to miss the occasional stamp scan.
Are you kidding me? Next question.
But what if you've had a hard day? Isn't it tough finding the energy?
When you're a part of horsepower, you are the energy. As a team, we're here to do whatever it takes. You think Quick Six, the touchdown horse, complains about being too tired after he's done all that running because of Stamps, who scored 40 points? I don't think so.
Do whatever it takes to be a part of our team. Stampeders season tickets on sale now. Visit stampeders.com.
The Craft Celebration Tour is taking SportsCenter on the road. We want to come to your town. Visit craftcelebrationtour.ca. Nominate your community project today. If chosen, your town receives $25,000 for the project and gets to host a live SportsCenter broadcast. Welcome back to our coverage of the 2013 CFL Draft. Lyndon Gadosh of the Calgary Dinos was selected #1 overall by the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Selected 2nd overall, Andy Malumba from Eastern Michigan went to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Malumba has also signed a deal with the Green Bay Packers. With more on their selection, let's go to Winnipeg now. Sean Churchill standing by with Winnipeg Blue Bomber General Manager Joe Mack.
Well, thank you very much. I'm joined by Blue Bombers GM Joe Mack. And Joe, you got the guy that you wanted, Andy Malumba. What do you like about him?
Great kid, plays hard, really good motor, very aggressive. He's athletic. He has good overall size, and so we think he'll be able to play up and down the defensive line, give us real versatility. He's a quality kid. It helped a lot, too, in that our defensive coordinator, Casey Crehan, recruited him to Eastern Michigan. So we know a lot about him, and we're really, really excited to have him.
The fact that he signed a deal with Green Bay Packers obviously didn't scare you away.
No, I mean, we took that into consideration. Of course, we wish Andy the best down there. But we had 3 or 4, maybe probably 4 players we had at a certain plateau that we felt were just, much more ready to contribute. And Andy was one of those. We just felt that we couldn't step below that plateau. So, we might have to wait for a little bit, but we think it'll be really exciting when he gets here.
Thank you so much.
You bet. My pleasure. Thank you.
Joe Mack back to the boardroom. They will select in the 2nd round, 11th overall, the Blue Bombers. Let's go back to the Montreal Alouettes. Back on the clock, 5th selection. They already took Mike Edom with #3. This is familiar territory, getting some high picks in first rounds for Jim Popp.
Well, it's surprising to see Montreal picking twice this high. I mean, this is a team that hasn't drafted higher than 5th overall since they came back into the Canadian Football League in 1996. But a team that typically you do see them hold on to their picks rather than trade them away, so that within the first 2 rounds they typically have at least a couple of picks, often going offensive line with at least one of those picks. Building a lot of depth there, Paul.
Yeah, you made the point about the offensive line. When you start 5 guys up front, it gives you so much flexibility, and they've done a great job of developing guys. Christian Matt's another name that was talked about a couple of years ago, who was a good young player, still hasn't stepped on the field, but they're making sure they protect those guys, and they have those guys. When you start 5, you need to have a lot of them.
And how about they having Jerome Messam as a running back, who's going to be a motivated young athlete to say, my career is on the way up, it is not on the way down. Jerome Messam, he has some power. And if you can get his power going in a game, you get a little bit of play action passes going, you are on your way. It was a good move to get Jerome Messam. I think he's going to be a focused athlete because he knows as running backs go, they're limited time. They only average, 4 years sometimes? But that will be an interesting aspect of Canadian talent producing a result.
Interesting offseason for the Alouettes.
Yeah.
Dan Hawkins and all this talk now about Tim Tebow. Do you buy any of it?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
That was a very definitive answer, wasn't it?
You want a quarterback guru?
We saw the commissioner walk behind you quickly, so we'll take that as a no. No on Tebow. With the selection for the Montreal Alouettes, 5th overall, their 2nd selection in the top 5. Once again, here's Mark Cohan.
Tebow. With the 5th overall pick and their 2nd pick today, the Montreal Alouettes select from the University of Calgary, running back Stephen Lumbala.
Stephen Lumbala, you are selection #5. Great bloodlines.
Well, no question about that. Younger brother of BC Lions fullback Roley. Another brother, Jacques, was a terrific running back at St. Mary's University. Stephen Lumbala is a guy who saw his stock fall a little bit this year after 3 phenomenal seasons at the University of Calgary. Played through injuries and so on this year, but this is a guy who the body of work over the course of 4 years, as impressive as any running back to me in the recent history of CIS football. Schultz just finished talking about Jerome Messam. You look at Stephen Lumbala as a fit in terms of a team swinging the way they use that ratio, Paul.
Yeah, if you look at the big picture of this pick, if Jerome Messam is somebody who can play at a high level, if he can play at a high level, now you can start your 3rd non-import running back in the Canadian Football League with Jerome Messam and backed up by Stephen Lumbala.
Well, there it is. Stephen Lumbala goes #5 overall. And again, they've got Jerome Messam as well, so we'll see how that works out. Happy to be joined once again by the commissioner, Mark Cohan. As you mentioned, just coming off the 100th Grey Cup. Time to maybe put things in perspective as we look ahead to the new season and the 101st Grey Cup. How's Regina going to top what Toronto did?
I think they're just going to build on top of it. I mean, the fact of the matter, it was a phenomenal year last year. But when you think about the great performances we had on the field last year with J.C. Sherritt or Andrew Harris or John Cornish, we're going to have the same this year. And this draft is the start of that. So I think there's so much great momentum. The opening of the new Bomber Stadium on June 27th, it's just going to show the new CFL.
Let's talk about some of the off-season things and the hot-button topics and some of the challenges and some of the things you're looking forward to ahead.
Well, I mean, the great new thing was a new TV deal, so
thank you.
You're still employed,
thanks, by the way, guys. Let's hear a great big round of applause for the commissioner. Good job.
But the new stadiums,
we've signed you to a 10-year deal, by the way.
Good,
yeah, that's
good. You know, when we think about all those things, Hamilton building their brand new stadium, going back to Moncton for Touchdown Atlantic, the third time we're going back there, so we can see, could we have a 10th team? There's so much going on, and then obviously Ottawa next year, so the momentum is just building.
Commissioner, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Getting ready for the 6th overall pick coming up in just a moment. It is Wally Buono and the BC Lions. Mike Benavidez in the Lions last year. So close. Did not get back to the Grey Cup. Stephon Charles still on the board. Could he be next? We'll find out as our draft coverage continues. Thanks,
in the offseason, Horsepower acquired some new members. What will they bring to the table?
Depth. This year, we're going to be the difference between winning and losing. I like the potential of some of our rookies right now. They got great voices, but there's some room on our roster. So for all of you sitting at home, this is your chance to commit, to focus, to jump in with both feet and do whatever it takes to be a part of our team.
Do whatever it takes to be a part of our team. Stampeders season tickets on sale now. Visit stampeders.com.
NHL on TSN. Stanley Cup playoffs continue tonight. Capitals and Rangers, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. Stanley Cup playoffs continue on TSN. 2013 season is around the corner. Season game tickets, group packages now available. Single game tickets go on sale June 1st. For details, visit cfl.ca/tickets for your tickets. Let's go over to Dave Naylor once again.
Thanks, Rod. Our CIS coaches were all gushing when the Stephen Labala pick came out. They like him a lot. The big question, this has been a role that has not been easy for guys to maintain, being a star tailback in the CIS and maintaining that at the CFL level. Danny Machocha, do you think Stephen Labala can do that?
Well, it seems like the Alouettes do, and Jim Popp in particular. When you take a look at their backfield with Mesa, with Dietrich, and now with Lambala, is this a ratio change as far as their tailback position is concerned? He's a quality back. He'll get you some tough yards. He's a durable back, and you know, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. So this could be a potential ratio change for the Montreal Alouettes.
Steph, do you think this guy can be a tailback in the Canadian Football League?
Absolutely. If you watch the first round of the playoffs this year, he went off for 250 against Regina. We had to play him the next week. We were scared to death. His lateral movement's excellent, makes the first guy miss always, and keeps his balance and just keeps going. He's special.
Brian?
Oh, I agree with Steph. His ability to make people miss is, I think, exceptional. And you know, good for Steve. There's been some knock on him. He didn't have a great year. He doesn't have great speed. He gets it done. He's got very good speed, and he is one heck of a running back. I think Montreal's made a great selection.
Yeah, a little more of a speed running back than his older brother, Rolly Lambala, who just re-signed with the BC Lions. Rod, back to you.
He makes big plays, Stephen Labala, and so far, 5 picks, 3 members of the Calgary Dinos, 2 from Eastern Michigan. That means that an Eastern Michigan pick is next. No. I don't know if that's true. The BC Lions will select next, and they are ready. Here's the commissioner, Mark Cohan.
Now, Rod, this is a little different. With the 6th overall pick, the BC Lions select from Liberty University offensive lineman Hunter Stewart.
Hunter Stewart is the 6th overall selection to Wally Buono and the BC Lions. Dwayne?
Well, Hunter Stewart is a guy, you talk about ratio changers, a guy who can potentially come in and play left tackle. He is following the Chris Schultz path to the big leagues. 6'7", a guy who started his career as a defensive lineman at the University of Virginia, transferred to Liberty, coached by a former CFLer, Turner Gill at Liberty. He moves to the offensive side of the ball. This is a guy who is still developing, a work in progress, but another year of eligibility at the NCAA level. This is a terrific pick for the BC Lions. Again, a team that currently plays 2 American offensive tackles, perhaps looking long-term at making the change to at least one of those spots as a Canadian position.
Yeah, they'll wait a year, let him come in, try to develop him as an offensive tackle. There's no saying that he has to play tackle. He can move inside early on to play guard, and if he's got the feet to stay outside, he'll go outside to tackle.
Well, I tell you, the BC Lions don't need a whole lot. You know, because I expressed the number of defenses with the Hamilton Ticats that were rated low. With the BC Lions, it's the exact difference. On the defensive side of the football, 6 of the 8 top categories, they're number 1. 4 of the 8 on offense, they're number 1. This is a team that has an opportunity just to increase their depth across the front. Their center, Angus Reid, can't play forever. So you can always take an offensive lineman, move him in as a guard, move your best guard, move him in as center. Again, I like it when things make sense. It makes sense. Good job, BC.
One of the things that made sense earlier was that Lyndon Gaydosh went number 1 overall. Again, Gaydosh from the University of Calgary Dinos, a big defensive lineman. Obviously, the Hamilton Tiger Cats very excited to have Gaydosh in their ranks now. And Kent Austin is standing by with Claude Feg.
Well, a big day for the Hamilton Tiger Cats selecting first overall. And Ken Austin, you had said before the draft that you wanted somebody that might be able to step in right away, that would have impact, a lot of skill set. Did you get your man with Lyndon Gaydosh?
We certainly feel like we did. Yeah, we love Lyndon. He's got a great future ahead of him. He fills a need for us, and we think he will have an impact for us pretty quick.
So when you looked at different potential scenarios, when you look at a guy like Lyndon, and having talked to your new defensive coordinator, Orlando Steiner, is there any early indication as to where he will play on the D-line?
No, he's a D tackle for sure. Yeah, and you know, we'll configure the pieces as we get him in pads and coach these guys for the first time in pads. But Lyndon has all the qualities. We like him as a person. We like his character. We like his work ethic, his skill set, as you mentioned already, his strength, and glad to have him in the fold.
And when you look at the D situation, obviously not the strong suit of this team last year, is it fair to say you'll lean more towards those kind of players as you move along in the draft here?
Well, it depends. It depends how the complexion of the draft plays out right now, and then we'll weigh it at that time on what's available. It's still with an eye towards the best football player.
All right, Kent. Thank you for this. Congratulations.
All right. Thanks so much.
The new general manager, head coach Kent Austin, and his first selection overall, Lyndon Gaydosh. You see the impressive numbers. He is a big guy and one of the great dinos in his time at the U of C. Speaking of Calgary, the Stampeders will select next. There's John Huffnagel. He has the next selection. John Cornish, of course, a key Canadian component to that team. And Steph Patazik is in the back. There's one of his marauders, Ben Aguilar. Could he be up? We'll see next. For all the latest news, videos, stats, much more, join the conversation. Great website, CFL.ca. You can also join us on Twitter and at Facebook. And, of course, it is the CFL Draft Day 2013. Lyndon Gaydosh going number 1 overall to the Hamilton Tiger Cats. We're at selection number 7 now. Calgary Stampeders are on the clock. They are ready. Here is Commissioner Mark Cohon.
Now with the 7th overall pick in the 2013 CFL Draft, the Calgary Stampeders select from the University of Texas, El Paso, offensive lineman Brander Craighead.
Here's the pick. Brander Craighead goes 7 overall to the Stampeders. Dwayne Ford.
Well, you're seeing a little bit of a trend here, and with Ottawa picking at number 9, you've got a team that can pick only redshirt junior players from NCAA schools, and now the seal has been broken, so to speak, with BC picking Hunter Stewart, now Brander Craighead, 2 very good offensive tackles within this draft class. Guys, Craighead at 6'6", a guy who projects being able to play the offensive tackle spot, doing it at a high level at a D1 school. The thing that I'm going to note, both Stewart and Craighead, Ottawa natives, now taken off the board, guys that clearly would be targets for the Ottawa franchise coming in with their first pick, guys that would make sense. Still leaves Connor Williams, another Ottawa native defensive lineman from Utah State, on the board. But we're predicting, because of Ottawa picking in this draft, that you're going to see the run on red shirts happen a little earlier, Paul, than it usually does. And I think with that BC Lions pick as I said, the seal was broken. Now you're probably going to see it continue.
And the thing you continue to see is what you talked about earlier, is the fact that offensive linemen, a lot of people want to play non-imports, and Calgary not only has Dan Federkill in this offseason, now they got a player who they think maybe can be a tackle down the road.
Okay, Dwayne Ford, let me ask you this. Is that a preemptive strike by those last two teams taking Ottawa athletes? So the Ottawa, the new franchise, Red Blacks can't get those two players?
I believe it's pronounced Rod Blacks.
No.
You know, it's not a matter of taking Ottawa players. They would have taken those guys if they were from the Northwest Territories.
You never know. You never know.
But it's not about taking Ottawa guys. What it's about is you've got two very good offensive tackles who are red shirts, and you know that Ottawa's going to take a red shirt in this thing. And so preemptive in the sense that, yeah, these are the guys that Ottawa's targeting, but having nothing to do with where they're from.
And our conversation has been preemptive because we were going to talk about that when Ottawa was to select. They have 4 selections in this draft. Again, they're not up and running until next year. Of course, the expansion draft still to come. Much more to talk about in terms of Ottawa, but they will select after Toronto, number 9, and they have 4 selections, and they have to be redshirt underclassmen, Dwayne.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys who have a remaining year of eligibility at an American school, a situation hopefully allowing Ottawa to have a couple of players in their pipeline going into that 2014 season when they come into the league. Now, the risk you run, as I said, you've got a lot of the best players in this draft who are redshirt juniors. I think the run has now started. You're probably going to see a string of those guys start to get selected. You may not see guys left for Ottawa by the time they get to round 4.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about what the league has done is they're allowing Ottawa to build a roster. You know, so taking the juniors is a great thing, I think, for the Ottawa franchise because it allows them to be able to have some guys in the system over a course of 2 years, just instead of just the other draft that they have in December.
A little bit different than last time with the old Renegades. Just a little bit different. Again, Ottawa will select after Toronto, the defending Grey Cup champions, Jim Barker, general manager, and Andre Dury and these Argos. Who will be the Canadian they will pick? Matt Sewell is still on the board. We'll see when we come back.
My name is Dale West, and I was a member of the 1966 Grey Cup champion Saskatchewan Roughriders. In celebration of our team hosting the 2013 Grey Cup Championship, it is my pleasure to announce the selection of the Roughriders' #1 round selection in this year's CFL Draft. With this pick, the Saskatchewan Roughriders select number 849, Corey Watman, offensive lineman, Eastern Michigan.
A classy move from the Saskatchewan Roughriders, the year of their Grey Cup, the 101st, of course, in November. They'd love to be a host team as well. And Brendan Taman is their general manager. They now have Corey Watman selected in the first round here in today's draft. And Lee Jones had a chance to speak with Brendan.
Well, Brendan, you addressed some of your offensive line depth with your first-round pick. Other than his size, his impressive size, what did you like about Corey Watman that made him the 4th overall selection?
Well, character-wise, he's off the charts. He's a great kid. He's really going to add to our group that way, and obviously he can play the game of football. So he'll bring some, flexibility with center guard that he plays, and it's obviously an area that we always want to have a lot of guys in. So we needed some bodies there, so we wanted to get a good guy, and that's who we picked.
Ideal situation, you'd have him learning behind Dominic Picard for a bit, but last year Ben Heenan had to be thrown in. Do you feel he's pretty close to being ready to play in the CFL?
Yeah, I think, with some coaching and some time, you need time with these kids. But if he had to go in and try to produce for us a little bit, I think he could do it. And obviously, we picked him pretty high, so we're very confident in him.
You talked earlier last week that you wanted to make sure you brought in somebody that would be here at camp. How important was it to maybe not take somebody that had been signed in the NFL?
Well, we're still a building team with our group, and I think we're not a team that can afford to wait on people and just hope you get them in a year or two. We want a guy here now, like I said, and the more the better is the way we look at it, and the more depth we can get, that's great.
What else do you look to address later on here in the draft?
We'll see. There's a lot of things we're still trying to work out as we go here, but receiver is one probably position that we might look at, and from there, who knows?
All right, thanks for this.
Thanks.
Riders' next pick is in the 3rd round. Coming up, defending Grey Cup champions Toronto Argos. Interesting to note, Dwayne Ford, first draft in a long time. We haven't had a trade yet.
No, and it's a case where the teams that were picking at the top of this thing had some pretty targeted guys they wanted to go after, wanted to hold on to those picks. The price to move up was steep.
Target something for the Argos. What do they need?
Well, I think the Argos are another team that could probably use some young depth along their offensive line. We've looked at defensive line as well for them, with that being a deep position in this class.
Okay, once again, here's the commissioner, Mark Cohon.
Thanks, Rod. With the 8th overall pick, the Grey Cup champions, the Toronto Argonauts, select from McMaster University offensive lineman Matt Big Bear Sewell.
All right. Big Bear, Matt Sewell from McMaster, Vanier Cup champion 2 years ago, protected the blind side of Kyle Quinlan. He is a beast, and Matt Sewell also has signed an NFL deal.
Yeah, he has. Matt Sewell is with the Tennessee Titans. It remains to be seen how long he's going to be there, but as Steph Potasic touched on off the top, you've got to believe with the tools he's got, long arms, big body, great feet, that he is a prototypical offensive tackle in any league. And so this is a guy that you add to the pipeline for the Toronto Argonauts. They've already got a former McMaster Marauder in Chris Van Zyl as a starting tackle in this league. The hope is that Joel Reinders out of University of Waterloo may develop into a tackle for them as well, but they want to ensure that they can keep that as a Canadian position, possibly in the long term have 2 Canadian starters at those tackle spots. I think the big thing with Matt Sewell, I've always talked about wanting to see him have more of a mean streak, but I think because he's been in the spotlight so long, we spend so much time talking about maybe what he should be that you almost forget just how good he is.
Yeah, I had a chance to see him at the East-West game, and it was the first day of practice. He was having trouble with some of the guys, the speed guys, but I certainly think with development he'll be a great player.
His coach, I guess his old coach now, Steph Potasic, is with Dave Naylor in the crew.
Yes, the biggest player so far to go in this draft. Steph Potasic, how dominant was Matt Sewell at the CIS level for you?
Oh, Big Bear is a human highlight reel. Pancake after pancake. He is started left tackle day 1 and been there his entire career. I'm pumped he's going to be local, and I think there's a real neat mentorship potential with Chris Van Zyl and him. Chris might be one of the best tackles currently playing in the CFL, and I would love if Matty were to be there and understudy under Chris's tutelage. That would be fun to watch.
Is this guy as good as any left tackle you've seen in the CIS in a while, Danny Matocha?
I would think so. I would think so, and I would like to think that also Jim Barger did some homework here, researching it, knowing full well, but with this pick, the 8th pick overall, that there is a possibility that he may see him for the second half of the season or in the very near future.
Yeah, likely won't see him for the opening day of training camp, but possibly, as you say, later in August as he will begin his football career with the Tennessee Titans. Rod, back to you.
All right, thanks so much. Congratulations to Matt Sewell. Again, the Toronto Argonauts select him 8th overall. That normally would be the last pick of the first round, but guess who's coming to the party next year? Ottawa. Miles Garrell, Marcel Desjardins, they will make their selection. It has to be an underclassman, a junior. That's next.
Eskimo football is back. Season seats are now on sale for as low as $214. Visit esks.com today for everything Eskimo and to get your tickets to cheer on the ball is back. Season seats are now on sale for as low as $214. Visit esks.com today for everything Eskimo and to get your tickets to cheer on the green and gold. Let's go, Eskimos!
The Ottawa franchise, soon to be announced. Looks like it's going to be Red Blacks for 2014, and Ottawa gets to select in this draft 4 rounds, the end of each round coming up. Dwayne, they have to be redshirt prospects or underclassmen, juniors right now. That's the only stipulation for Ottawa.
Yeah, and the thing for Ottawa is at this point, you ideally want a redshirt who's going to be in training camp for you a year from now, and so there's a little bit of a challenge to this. For the Ottawa franchise, you've got a couple of offensive linemen who are Eastern Ontario guys off the board already. A guy like Bo Lacumbo, the best red shirt on the board. This is a guy who's going to be NFL bound most likely. Nolan McMillan, a top offensive lineman at Iowa, could be NFL bound as well, but a guy that they could possibly take a gamble on here.
Yeah, I looked at film in McMillan, and I loved him on tape, but I don't know if you're going to get him. So so now it's a chance for you to be in a position to talk to your scouts in the NFL and try to get a feel for where you think these players are going to be placed in a year from now, and then you make your decision.
Nice to be saying Ottawa.
Yeah,
absolutely. Nice to be saying Ottawa. This is kind of the preemptive strike for Ottawa for 2014. Here is their selection. Let's go to the commissioner.
It is great to be saying Ottawa, and with the 9th overall pick, Ottawa. I won't say the name. I won't say the name. Selects from the University of Iowa, offensive lineman Nolan McMillan.
We thought the commissioner would give it away. No, he didn't. But he gave us the selection of Nolan McMillan. Tell us about Nolan McMillan, Dwayne Ford.
I go back 4 years, and Nolan McMillan, of all the Canadians in this 2013 CFL draft class, this was the kid who was the most highly recruited, had plenty of big schools, ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12 schools after him. Nolan McMillan, pretty good feet as an offensive lineman, obviously a big body. This is a guy who made several all-freshman teams in 2010 after redshirting in 2009. The biggest concern with him has been he's battled some injuries. He missed the entire 2011 season due to injuries, but he's got another year to go. Some people see him as possibly a day 3, a late-round NFL draft pick. That's the gamble for Ottawa on this one. But if he turns up, Toronto native, played some of his high school football at St. Mike's High School here in Toronto. A very good one for Ottawa if they actually get him.
The CFL draft, as we know, is not an exact science like all of the other drafts, but Schultz, this is such a difficult draft so often, even for the #1 selection. Doesn't always turn out to be a star. But added to the intrigue this year is having Ottawa and having to draft where they're drafting and who they are drafting.
Well, who they're drafting are potential players that they anticipate will be a part of their organization from day one for a long, long time. But remember, a year from now, Ottawa's going to be able to pick and choose players off of each CFL roster, the key ones being the best backup quarterback you can find. Now, that must create a little bit of resentment around the league, because if I'm the head coach and I'm losing some of the guys I developed, but for the good of the league and the profitability of the league, those decisions they make about taking players off the roster are going to be critical, because we all want to see Ottawa be not just a success, but an immense success.
Interesting, though, a historic pick. He may never play for them, but Nate McMillan is technically the first ever Ottawa player.
That's right. Ottawa...
Red so the CFL draft, we head into round number 2, and let's go through it once again. Lyndon Gaydosh goes #1 overall. Heavy Dino representation in the top 5 picks, including Mike Edom, Stephen Lumbala. Again, the Montreal Alouettes getting that #3 pick because Edmonton got Brody McKnight last year in that trade, so Montreal got that #3 pick overall. Then some redshirt underclassmen that went a little bit later, but D linemen go 1-2. The first D lineman to go since Adam Braidwood. Shamari Williams, you could say, also a couple of years ago, though he came in as a linebacker. The first Calgary Dino to go first overall since Don Blair in 1996. That's Lyndon Gaydosh. Here's the second round, and so now we talk about the Edmonton Eskimos, and they got their pick via the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Yeah, and the Edmonton Eskimos, a team that is, I guess you could say, rebranding themselves under new general manager Ed Hervey, a team that wants to be a little bit bigger and a little bit more physical. And I look forward to seeing what Ed's first pick is going to be, Paul.
Yeah, and the one thing, looking at their roster, they have 41 Canadians under contract right now. They understand that they want to have a lot of depth at the Canadian position and try to give them flexibility. And certainly when you have that many guys around, not all of them are going to make it, but you're really going to put yourself in a position to understand, where I can keep a guy around.
Well, Ed Hervey, this is his opportunity to build the team and the way he wants to build a team. A great comment in the Edmonton paper saying, as much as they want a great football player, they want a winner. Now, how do you define a winner as a football player? Well, they want guys who are going to be the first one there and the last one to leave. They want guys that they don't have to worry about the player off field. They want guys with a level of toughness and commitment to the sport that love football. There's a lot of intangibles that go into draft that are personality-based. I know you've been through that, where you have a certain athlete, he looks great, but you don't know whether he can be the type of character player that's going to show up every day.
Well, and I really think that, Kavis and Ed have done their due diligence looking at each guy, and they do a great job of studying him and interviewing him, and then they'll make the best decision.
So, be Ed Hervey right now if you can. I'm asking you to be a lot of people here today, but you know so many of these players so well. What do you think they're looking at?
Well, I could easily see them staying with this redshirt run. I mean, we finished that first round, and you got to start to factor guys like Matt Sewell, who are under contract to NFL teams. Those guys now fall into the same class as your redshirts. You consider them futures because you don't anticipate having those guys at the start of the year. So knowing that this team wants to be a little bigger, a little tougher, a little nastier, I mean, it wouldn't shock me to see them roll the dice on a guy like Stephon Charles, knowing that he might be a couple years away, but it kind of fits with the mold of where Ed Hervey's going here.
There is a great feature on CFL.ca and TSN.ca, Stephon Charles in an interview room with Ed Hervey getting ready for this draft as they were going. Did you see this, Schultz?
No.
It was very, very intense with Steph Charles, but you could see the emotion in this young man. And again, hailing from the Toronto area, but also playing at the University of Regina. Is it him with this pick in the second round? First pick of the second round to Edmonton, and here's the commissioner.
Did you guys see the pick before I got it? With the 10th overall pick, the Edmonton Eskimos select from the University of Regina defensive lineman Stephon Charles.
And you know, Dwayne, you look at Ed Hervey's eyes in that feature, and there's something that he really likes about Stephon Charles. It was an intense interview.
Well, for anybody who was kicking around the league when Ed was still playing before he got into this scouting side of things, you know, I mean, Ed was a guy who was a competitor, played with an edge, and you can see him looking for some of that in his players. Now, as I said, this becomes a future pick. Stephon Charles got a significant signing bonus to join the Tennessee Titans. They've made a bit of a commitment to him, but I mean, the fact is this is a very unique talent. This is a guy about which I will say the Canadian Football League changed its draft rules to make sure that Stephon Charles was included in this draft class. Otherwise, he's a guy who could have been in the NFL this year and would have had to wait another year before he became eligible for the NFL draft. It's kind of a statement pick. It's one with which they're going to have to be patient. But they've got themselves a great prospect in the pipeline for sure.
Well, with Ted Laurent already there, Donnie Ramey's son, you have you've depth at the defensive line. They can wait a little bit to see him and see what happens with him. But he is a force on the inside, and you really have to double him because he would throw people out of the gym, as we like to say, in the eval camp.
Well, we were all at the combine this year. And when Steph Charles showed up and started playing football, our jaws dropped. I mean, this is a complete physical specimen. Now, as an offensive lineman, you know, you turn, you go to the ball, and you see the opponent that you got to compete against 60 or 70 times. And when they take a look at Steph Charles, that offensive lineman is going to say, oh, my God, you got to be kidding me. He has great potential to be a great football player. He's got that nasty little intimidation about him, that pride about him, where if he doesn't win the one-on-ones, he takes it personally. We saw that at E-Camp, where he lost his temper 3 or 4 times. That's not a bad quality. That's
he plays angry.
He plays angry.
One thing, I'll just give a shout out to Calgary's offensive line. You know, like he needs to show up in the bigger games because he was a little bit inconsistent in some of those games down the stretch in the playoff games. He's got the ability to dominate when he's playing, so that's what he needs to do.
Well, Steph Charles did not take the easy road to get where he is right now, but congratulations to this young man, an impressive specimen who is now a member of the Edmonton Eskimos. Again, the first selection in the second round. Already earlier today, a piece of history. Nolan McMillan goes to the Ottawa franchise, and this is how it happened.
Let's go ahead.
Okay, Ottawa is proud to select. Ottawa est fier de sélectionner player number 514, joueur numéro 514, Nolan McMillan, offensive lineman, Iowa.
Winnipeg Blue Bombers will select number 2 in the second round, number 11 overall. Their second selection already for the Bombers, who selected number 2 overall. Andy Mulumba from Eastern Michigan, selected earlier, defensive lineman. Who will they pick now with that selection? Once again, the commissioner, Mark Cohon.
Thanks, Rod. With the 11th overall pick, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers select from Concordia University, defensive back Chris Robertson.
Chris Robertson, combine off the charts.
Yeah, Chris Robertson, absolutely a freakish athlete, particularly quick, jumped through the ceiling. The knock on Chris Robertson, he's a smaller defensive back. But this is a team that has, again, not changed the way they do the ratio, but they have committed to playing a Canadian at free safety, going out and signing Koshi Mwamba from the BC Lions during free agency. Committed to playing that spot. They don't have a lot of depth there. Chris Robertson is a guy who fits in terms of the ratio. I thought this was a little bit early for Chris Robertson to go in this draft because of his size, but there's absolutely no questioning his athleticism, Mark.
Special teams player probably right away, but he also could return someday. Chris Robertson from the Concordia Stingers, and here's Dave Naylor.
Well, we got a player from the Quebec Conference, so we're going to throw it over to Danny Machocha. You played against this guy. Tell us a little bit about what your impressions are of Chris Robertson.
Well, obviously, he's tested well at the Quebec regionals, and then obviously got an opportunity to go to the E-Camp. Clearly gifted when the ball's in his hands, even though he's a defensive back. And he's got he's good in and out of his back pedal. He's clearly gifted when he's got the ball in his hands. He's got the ability to return punts, the ability to return kickoffs. So he's going to be an intriguing young man going into training camp. And if and if they've got some issues as far as the back end, as far as having not enough numbers, when I make reference to non-imports, he could be someone that can fit the bill.
When I want to get back to pick number 10 at Edmonton, when Stephon Charles went to the Eskimos, you mouthed to me, "I love this guy." Tell me why you're so intrigued by this defensive line prospect from the University of Regina.
I'll tell you what, I have a lot of respect for this young man. He's gone through a lot to get where he is, and he's 6'5", 310 pounds, and he's a load. He's going to require double teams as he matures into a player. He's a great run stopper. But Chris Schultz touched on it. He is emotional. He's an emotional young man. He has a lot of pride. And when he steps up and uses that in a positive way, as Chris alluded to, he's unstoppable, and he's a player. He comes to play the game, and when he's on, he's going to be a huge impact player in the CFL.
There's going to be a little extra CFL focus on training camp for the Tennessee Titans this year. Rod, back to you.
For sure, there will be with Matt Sewell and Steph Charles. Again, Steph Charles going to Edmonton, Chris Robertson going to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Now, for the 12th selection, keep in mind we have the first 2 rounds here on TSN and rounds 3 to 7 on TSN.ca. The BC Lions got this pick after a trade with the Edmonton Eskimos. We talked about the Lions already earlier. They've already taken Hunter Stewart, an offensive lineman from Liberty, a redshirt player. Who do they take here?
Well, I like the defensive line pick here because this is a team that last year, 2nd overall, chose Jabbar Westerman, a guy who ended up being the West Division Rookie of the Year. You want to see his role expand and eventually, probably within the next year or so, get to a point where Jabbar Westerman is a starter for this team. In order to do that, you need to have defensive line depth behind him. Not necessarily urgent for 2013. So if you pick a redshirt who's coming in next year, that works for the BC Lions.
Yeah, McMaster's Ben D'Aguilar would be a great pick right here, and a kid who's athletic who could come in and play special teams. I think he's going to have to put his hand in the ground, but I think he'd be a great pick.
Safety. Go for that one player in the middle of the football field that is going up on Canadian Football League, knows it, that knows how to roam, knows how to pick the football off and create a turnover. Safety.
They had a guy in Koshi Mwamba, of course, let him go to free agency, and Koshi ended up with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers with his brother Enoch. So here we go, BC Lions once again on the clock, and here they are. They are ready with their selection. Again, here's the commissioner.
Thanks again, Rod. With the 12th overall pick, the BC Lions select from Laval University wide receiver Seydou Junior Hadera.
Seydou Junior Hadera. Dwayne, you and I have had a chance to watch this young man with the Rouge et Or the last few years. Steph Patazik has had a chance to see him as well, and then the last couple of Vanier Cups. He's an impressive prospect.
Yeah, absolutely. This is another one of those guys, very highly recruited in the province of Quebec 4 years ago. It took a little while to find his stride and kind of find his niche with the Rouge et Or, but really, and I found in his senior season, really stepped it up. We saw some of his explosiveness, some of his speed. Some people will compare him to a Patrick Lavoie in Montreal. I think another legitimate comparison in terms of the physical nature of this guy as a receiver would be to Corey Watson in Winnipeg, one of the few receivers who really stepped up at the CFL Combine and is a guy who may be even better suited to the pro game than he was to the CIS game, Paul.
Yeah, and you look at, they really get some great depth on their wide receiver core. Foster, Gore, Iannuzzi. Now they bring in a bigger guy who can probably do some of the interior blocking, blocking the defensive ends and everything. So they're really stacking the receiver position with another good pick.
And a great opportunity for him because he's going to go into an offense that is well established, that is sophisticated, that has had a lot of success. In a lot of ways, when you're there, all you have to do is absorb everything and then make your move the next year to create a starting position. Great opportunity for the young man.
Speaks volumes, guys, about the football factory that is the Rouge et Or and Glenn Constantine. So Seydou Junior Hadera goes number 12 overall. Calgary on the clock. The Stampeders once again will make their selection. Raider Craigwood went earlier. Raider Craighead earlier. Who will they take next? Number 13 overall. That's coming up on the CFL Draft. Getting ready for the Calgary Stampeders' second selection in this draft. It comes in round number 2 and the 13th spot. They already selected Brander Craighead a little earlier. Will it be offense? Will it be defense? What will it be here? The commissioner is ready with the selection. Mark?
With lucky number 13, the Calgary Stampeders select from McMaster University, defensive lineman Ben d'Aguilar.
Second Marauder to go, Ben d'Aguilar. A guy who's got, as they say, I know it's cliche, but a great motor.
Yeah, this is the guy who is, without question, when you look at the elite athletes in this draft, Ben d'Aguilar absolutely fits the mold. A very good pick for the Calgary Stampeders as a team. They've got guys like Justin Phillips who can play the defensive end spot. Junior Turner plays that defensive end spot. A guy who can fit into the rotation athletically, a guy who can also contribute for Mark Killam in his special teams unit. You got to like what you're adding in terms of a high-level athlete on this team.
Wears a tattoo with tiger cat stripes. They call him the Tiger, but he's now a member of the Calgary Stampeders. Let's go over to Dave Naylor.
Well, this is another player very well known to Steph Potasic. Tell us about d'Aguilar's ability to get upfield.
Benny set a new CIS record for sacks. He had 12.5 in 8 games. He can flat out get after the quarterback. At times, he's been sub 4.5 in our training camps, and some years fastest guy on the football field. And at 240 pounds, that shouldn't be the case. He's a freak of nature, and he is a very, very gifted football player. He'll be able to help on specials, linebacker. He's played a little bit, but I think his true home is rushing off the edge and going after quarterbacks.
Now, he does not have an NFL contract. He has an invite to some mini camps in the National Football League, so it could turn into an opportunity there. We will wait and see. I want to go back to the number 12 pick for a second. BC Lions with Seydou Junior Hedera. This was the guy you mentioned off the top of the show, Danny Machocha. What do you like about him so much?
Just because of the fact that you can use him in multiple packages. You can, like I said, use him as a tight end, as a fullback, and he is a polished receiver. Above average hands. He's a pretty good route runner in and out of cuts, and like I said, he's able to accumulate a lot of yak yards after he catches the football. So this is going to be someone that's going to play some significant role, I would think, with the BC Lions, and he's got a bright future, and he'll probably be a better pro player than he was a collegiate player.
Some pretty good talent coming off the board in round number 2. Rod, back to you.
Yes, indeed. Seydou Junior Hedera at 12, and then Ben d'Aguilar at 13. Steph Potasic loses 2 Marauders, but 2 great young players, now members of CFL teams. So here's the number 14 pickup coming, and again, the Montreal Alouettes, who are very busy this afternoon, Dwayne.
Yeah, Montreal, again, they had that number 3 overall pick where they took Mike Edom. Highest the Montreal Alouettes have picked since coming into the league in 1996. 2 picks in the top 5 allowed them to stock up, potentially long-term, secure a couple of Canadian starting positions. They haven't taken that offensive lineman yet, which has been one of the trends for them, though, Paul.
Well, and an interesting thing you got to think about, with a new coach here, they played predominantly American wide receivers. So now they've got a chance with Delorier, who's a good receiver. Maybe that coaching staff say, hey, we like him. We may be able to play change the ratio in this area and play a Canadian receiver. So if they do that, maybe there's a Canadian receiver on the board they like. So it's interesting when a new coach comes in that the ratio may change depending on what they like.
The one guy that I'll be watching with the Montreal Alouettes, that he'll stay healthy and he'll keep his temperament under control, is middle linebacker Shea Emery, because that's a unique athlete at a unique position. So if they do go linebacker, does that mean they're concerned about him? If they don't go at linebacker, is it they have a lot of confidence in Shea Emery? He was right at that point of being really, really good. He took a couple shots in the head. He had to adjust through that. He had some unnecessary roughness penalties.
He's an all-star.
He's an all-star that were based on excessive emotion. Now, is that a maturity issue? Is that a concussion issue? Shea Emery's the one guy that I'll be watching.
But another thing that could happen to their first 2 picks, they both took guys who are going to be in camp, right? I mean, so you may be looking at a junior here because sooner or later you can't keep everybody, and so they may be looking to see maybe there's a great junior on their board that they really like and they can wait for a year.
Is that maybe the MO for Jim Pop right now?
Well, typically, I mean, we talk all the time about Montreal in terms of their draft philosophy or their draft strategy. And most typically, you would describe Montreal as a team that takes the best player available because they've been in a position to do that. Their picks aren't necessarily positional need driven. They've got a chance to do that, and there's some very good players on the board that you could wait for. One of the guys that stands out, I still think it's a little early for a Bo Lacumbo, but a guy like Brent Urban, terrific defensive tackle for the University of Virginia.
They've already taken a defensive player in Mike Edom from Calgary, and also Stephen Lumbala, also a couple of Dinos. Maybe they're rating Blake Nill in the Calgary Dinos. Let's see what the Alouettes have in store with this selection. Again, Commissioner Mark Cohan.
Now with the 14th overall pick, the Montreal Alouettes select from Rice University defensive lineman Hossam Shaheen.
Here it is from Rice University, Hossam Shaheen.
Well, part of a great Canadian combination inside, plays down there at defensive tackle along with Christian Covington at D tackle for the Rice Owls. Shaheen, a guy who came off injury to post a very good 2012 season, 5 sacks last year, among the best in the NCAA and Division I schools among defensive tackles. Great push on the inside, 290 pounds, British Columbia native. This is a guy who's going to have an opportunity a year from now where he's not projected as a high NFL guy per se, that is likely going to be in the Alouettes camp, potentially replacing J.P. Bakasiak long-term, Rod.
Congratulations, Hossam Shaheen. Selected 14 overall by the Montreal Alouettes. Well, the Hamilton Tiger Cats already have Lyndon Gaydosh selected number 1, a happy Kent Austin. First year as general manager and head coach. They select next. Brett Jones is available.
With the first pick in the first round, the Hamilton Tiger Cats proudly select selection list number 288, Lyndon Gaydosh, defensive line from the University of Calgary.
Kent Austin's first selection as general manager of the Hamilton Tiger Cats earlier today on our coverage here on TSN of the 2013 CFL Draft. Another history-making event came when the Ottawa franchise took Nolan McMillan. Their new general manager, Marcel Desjardins, had a chance to speak with Terry Marcotte.
Marcel, does it feel now that you're in business?
It does. We have a player name to add to our list of players that we may be able to go to one day, and Nolan McMillan is the first one.
Tell us about that historic draft pick.
Well, I mean, he's a player that we had rated pretty much at the top of our board. We like everything he does on the field. He's tough. He's a position that, you know, Canadians will play in this league for a long, long time. So just fit in perfectly for what we want to do.
How limiting is this draft for you?
It is limiting. You know, we only have really access to about 8 to 10 quality players. So we're kind of, you know, at the mercy of other teams in terms of how they're going to deal with these guys.
You get through today, you've got plenty of work left. Where do you go from here?
Well, I mean, we continue to prepare for the expansion draft, which is in December, so we'll evaluate CFL players throughout the season. We're going to do NFL camps, obviously a lot of administrative stuff to do as well. So there's a lot to do, and it's just a question of attacking it in the right order.
Pretty exciting day for you.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got a great group here with Jeremy and Miles, and we're real happy with the pick that we got, and this is, again, the first step, but a big step.
All right. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Two key words. First step, they're getting their stadium ready, and the expansion draft still ahead, and we look forward to welcoming Ottawa officially in 2014. So, Hamilton Tiger Cats, Dwayne Ford, who will join Lyndon Gaydosh as the class of 2013?
Well, tough to say where this team is going to go next. We've got defensive back, potentially linebacker, a little bit of depth on the offensive line. When I look at those, I see offensive line as maybe a more potential spot for the Tiger Cats to go and look at adding a little bit of depth. One of the guys that I really like, one of my favorite prospects in this draft, is a guy like Chris Mercer.
Okay, let's find out. Here's the commissioner once again.
All right, we're back to Tiger Town. With the 15th overall pick, the Hamilton Tiger Cats select from the University of Virginia defensive lineman Brent Urban.
Okay, the Hamilton/Guelph Tiger Cats. Of course, they'll play some games in Guelph this year. And now Brent Urban is a member of the Ticats roster.
Brent Urban from my hometown of Mississauga, Ontario, Lorne Park Secondary School. A guy who really had a breakout year in 2012 for the Virginia Cavaliers under head coach Mike London. 6'7", 280 pounds. This is a guy who's got a terrific push. I think he's going to be a potential NFL guy next season when he enters his draft year. But again, you look at the commitment of the Hamilton Tiger Cats to playing non-imports at potentially now 2 defensive tackle spots with the depth they're building.
And what's great about this pick is they may have to wait for him for a little bit, but I want to talk about their roster. These players still haven't even been signed. Courtney Stephen, Fred Precious, Gaston Nadal, Mike Atkinson, and Mo Petrus are still out there. So they've got a lot of depth, and hopefully those guys are going to start showing up this year for them.
And the other players on the Hamilton Ticats know that these players is a distinct possibility that they're coming to town to earn a job. You mentioned the fact he's 6'7", 280 pounds. He had great arm extension. He knows how to play at a low level. When he shows up with the Hamilton Ticats, if and when, and all those other players do, all of a sudden that training camp becomes 2.5 weeks of anxiety because they go into that fighting for jobs. So it's a unique amount of players they have set to go if all things fall into place.
Yeah, good point by you, Paul LaPolice, though. They are loaded depth-wise with players that are still waiting. So a very good day, it appears, so far for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, loading up some more. Coming up next, the Calgary Stampeders once again. John Huffnagel and crew just selecting Ben Gagular from McMaster University, and earlier Brander Craighead. They went O-lineman and then a defensive player. Dwayne Ford, where are they going now?
Well, I think they're kind of getting to a point where they've addressed their most pressing needs already in this draft with their first 2 picks and addressed them very well in terms of the quality of players that they've got. So I think what you start to look at now is Calgary getting to a point where they can look at picking best players available. And we've talked about some of the guys that are out there, whether it's Chris Mercer is one of the guys I've got higher as an offensive lineman. Maybe you jump the gun on everybody else and go after a Bo Lacumbo here and keep your fingers crossed that he one day shows up in the CFL.
You know, I think at this point you take the best player available. If there's a lineman they really like, you can never go wrong taking an offensive lineman.
Oh, they are not going to take a kicker. They got the best punter and the best kicker in the entire Canadian Football League. I will say that. I'll be shocked if they take a kicker.
Rene Paredes and Rob Maver, of course, both all-stars. The commissioner is on his way to make the selection. Calgary's 3rd pick so far in the draft. Interesting to know, we've had 15 selections so far. Half of them have been defensive linemen. Very interesting so far. Let's find out what this selection is for Calgary. Here's the commissioner.
Now with the 16th overall pick, the Calgary Stampeders select from the University of Regina, offensive lineman Brett Jones.
Brett Jones was on the board, projected possible first round from the University of Regina. He joins his teammate Steph Charles as a draft pick on draft day 2013.
And Brett Jones is a guy, he's going to have the potential to play inside, whether it's at center or guard. Not the tallest offensive lineman, but very technically sound, very, very intelligent player, very intelligent person. And this is one of the reasons why we didn't see Brett Jones probably go a little bit earlier in this draft. This is a guy who's applied to medical school. And it's got some teams wondering exactly when or how long Brett Jones is actually going to be available to a Canadian Football League team.
Dr. Brett Jones.
Dr. Jones.
Dr. Jones. The doc is off the board. Future doc, at least, perhaps. Perhaps even a future Calgary Stampeder. Once again, Dave Naylor.
Well, they always talk about offensive linemen being the most cerebral position on the field. Brett Jones has an opportunity for medical school. We'll see if he plays in the Canadian Football League. He was the top offensive lineman in your conference last year, Brian Dobie. What can you tell us about this guy?
Yeah, absolutely. Brett is an outstanding offensive lineman. He's only 6'2", about 305, 307, but that's to his advantage. He plays very, very low. In fact, I was amazed having the opportunity to see him at East-West last year, up close and personal, how low he plays. And he can play either guard or center, and I think that's a tremendous benefit for him coming into the CFL. As Dwayne talked about earlier, he's waiting to find out about med school, and if you get to know him, an extremely articulate, professional, intelligent young man who's got a lot going for him. He's a true winner, and he's going to be a real asset to that Calgary program.
This is a guy who started from his freshman year. In terms of getting guys pro-ready, what is the difference in terms of a guy who's been on the field that much over his university career as opposed to guys who've been backing up and don't get on until, say, their 3rd year or halfway through or something like that?
It's significant. You think of the amount of reps he's had in first-team reps in practice, obviously game reps all the way through his career. It adds up, it's accumulative, and it's a real difference maker. There's no question you've seen Brett progress having coached against him, and that's probably exactly why is the amount of first-team reps he's had.
Well, we're used to talking about prospects when they have the NFL shadow over them. Are they going to end up in the CFL? We're not used to talking about medical school, but there are lots of things to consider on draft day. Rod, back to you.
You mentioned an inexact science sometimes. Grey Cup champions already made a selection earlier today. The Toronto Argos took Matt Sewell, of course. Who will they take with number 17 overall? That's next as our coverage of the 2013 CFL Draft rolls on.
With the 8th pick of the first round, the Toronto Argonauts select number 744, offensive lineman Matt Sewell.
Matt Sewell going to the Toronto Argonauts in the first round. They take the big offensive lineman who was also signed down south with the NFL. Maybe a bit of a risky move for the Argos right now. Welcome back to our coverage of the CFL Draft. You never know what those NFL signees will become or whether they will come back. But you like the idea of the Argos, who have not stayed pat, by the way, in this offseason, of getting even bigger on the O-line.
Well, it's not just bigger. It's the combination of that height and that athletic ability, because if Matt Sewell becomes a Toronto Argonaut, I mean, Tony Washington, 6'7", Joe Appel, 6'7", Joel Reiner, 6'7", 6'8" maybe, Matt Sewell, 6'8", then you got the little guy, Chris Van Zyl, 6'4", 6'5". Now, does that make a difference? It does in terms of leverage possibilities, arm length, pass blocking technique. If they can combine those players, because Joe Appel is a guy who's pre-plateau. He has a possibility to be really good. The other two are much more proven. Chris Van Zyl is the most consistent guy. But, man, Dwayne, if they get those types of bodies for an extended period of time, you got something special with the Argonauts.
Well, absolutely, and this is a Toronto Argonaut team. When you look at the potential long-term, Schultze, of playing an all-Canadian offensive line, one of the guys they've got in their pipeline currently with the Minnesota Vikings is offensive lineman Tyler Holmes out of the University of Tulsa, that they hope to one day have in their lineup as well.
Yeah, and certainly, you know, they went out and got Jermaine Reed last year. Yeah. So Adrian Belly's still on the roster. Again, whether he's going to be retiring or
he's like Sugar
not.
Ray Leonard. He just keeps coming back.
So, you know, I think they got Jermaine Reed to be a starter. You know, so they've done some good moves to protect themselves defensively to have that one starter.
Yeah, it's been an interesting offseason again for Scott Milanovich, Jim Barker, and the Argos, the defending Grey Cup champions. They have another selection here at number 17, and then it's Ottawa once again. Here is the commissioner.
With the 17th overall pick, the Grey Cup champions Toronto Argonauts select from Bishop's University defensive back Jermaine Gabriel.
Here it is. And it is Jermaine Gabriel, DB.
Jermaine Gabriel's a guy, started his college career at Bishop's University, made an immediate impact there. This is a guy who's a free safety with very good range, but also brings a physical dimension to that free safety spot. He played last year with the Calgary Colts in the CJFL. Outstanding defensive player there, also got involved in the special teams game. But a nice pick, whether you look at him as a guy who's going to be a starter or a special teams guy. I mean, he can compete on special teams right away.
Yeah, and certainly you always want to get some depth there. Matt Black's been a great player for him. You get another guy who can be in the mix to develop. You want to develop these guys.
You know, I guess we really haven't addressed that either, is, you know, the junior possibilities that exist out there. A guy who did play at Bishop's and then went to the Canadian Junior Football Conference.
Yeah, and obviously some great football being played at the junior level. Now, typically CJFL players aren't eligible for the Canadian Football League draft unless they've played university football first. Once you play university ball, it puts you into that stream. That's the case with Gabriel, and that's why he's eligible for this draft, as he started at Bishop's in '09. And
now a member of the Toronto Argos, and maybe, I say maybe, a future teammate of Matt Sewell, who got selected earlier. Matt's with us. Maybe he'll give us the scoop if he wants to play in Tennessee or he wants to play in Toronto. I'm not sure. Matt Sewell, congratulations on being selected in the CFL Draft.
Thank you very much.
What was your day like? I know you've had a lot of evaluation, a lot of interviews. You obviously signed down south right now. That's certainly a big option for you. But what does it mean to be selected in this draft?
It's huge, you know.
especially going to a team like Toronto, a championship team, you know, solid program. I think it's just a really good situation for me.
Matt, Dwayne Ford here, and first of all, congratulations on both your selection by the Argos and the contract in Tennessee. What sense do you get from the Titans in terms of how you, first of all, fit into that organization?
Well, basically, I'm just going to go down and try out and see what it's like and take it from there. But, you know, it's really nice to come up here and know that I got drafted by, you know, the Argos, and I have a good situation waiting for me.
Matt, you've protected the blind side of Kyle Quinlan. I know a lot of people hope that he lands a CFL job as well, full-time. But your coach is in the studio with us, Steph Patazik. Any words for him?
No, you know, he's been great for the last 4 years, helping me become not only a better football player, but a better person as well. And, you know, a lot of this is due to him and of course, the other coaches at MAC. So, you know, it really shows their hard work as we now have 2 guys drafted and hopefully a couple more later today.
Steph, we'll let you get a word in there with Matt.
Matty, how pumped is Mom that you could be close to home?
I think the first thing she said was that we can now drive to work, so she's pretty excited.
Congrats.
Yeah, Matt Sewell, I know it's been a dream ride for you the last couple of years. Vanier Cup, you get to another Vanier Cup final, you sign with the Titans, and you get drafted today. Enjoy. How are you going to celebrate tonight?
Just maybe go out to dinner with my family, but really not too much, just kind of low-key and relax and get ready because I leave on Thursday.
Yeah, get back to work. Matt,
Yep.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Matt Sewell, who was selected in the first round by the Toronto Argonauts. And again, Dwayne, the elephant in the room is the fact that he has signed with an NFL team.
Yeah, but Matt Sewell is the kind of prospect that there's no question. You wish him all the best down there, but the kind of guy, no doubt, he's worth waiting for.
Yeah, indeed. Ottawa is up next again with their second selection. And it's the final selection in round 2, and it's our final selection of our coverage on TSN. Then we'll go to tsn.ca. Dwayne Ford, here are the players who are off your list. Still, Bo Lacombo is up there.
Well, and this is looking at the guys who are eligible to be selected by Ottawa. The remaining NCAA red shirts on the board. Bo Lacombo, generally considered the best player in this draft, a likely top 3-round NFL pick next season. Whether this is the point that Ottawa tries to take that shot. Jesse Joseph, very good defensive lineman at University of Connecticut, coming off injury. Number 7 you see on that list, Connor Williams, defensive end from Utah State University, is, by the way, an Ottawa native. So that may be a fit on that basis as well.
Yeah, again, here's their second selection. They already took Nolan McMillan with their first ever pick, this Ottawa franchise, as they come back to the nation's capital. And once again, here's the commish.
Thank you, Rod, and thank you to our fans across Canada who've tuned in to see who are going to be the future superstars of the CFL. Now, with the 18th overall pick, the Ottawa franchise selects Utah State University defensive lineman Connor Williams.
Okay, Kreskin.
Connor Williams, as I said, Ottawa native, began down at Utah State as a redshirt linebacker, has beefed his way up to about 275 pounds. This guy plays end in a 3-4 defense, so potentially capable of shifting inside to a tackle spot, that traditional Canadian tackle spot in the CFL. Strong guy, weight room guy, very physical player, good motor guy, and as I said, Ottawa native. Going to help the new guys, Marcel Desjardins and the boys, sell some tickets.
Yeah, I thought his quickness was great. He really ran to the football. He just has to get a little bit more stout inside. You know, you can tell he's just made that transition from a linebacker. So now he's got to get bigger so he can play up and inside.
How good is that for Ottawa to get one of their very own as well? We'll see again in 2014 how it all works out. We'll be on tsn.ca streaming rounds 3 through 7. We're going to wrap the first 2 rounds. Very interesting day. A tradeless day, by the way, so far. We'll wrap it up in a moment. Moments of our first 2 rounds of the 2013 CFL Draft. Calgary Dinos had a lot of players selected today, including number 1, Lyndon Gaydosh.
Yeah, 3 Dinos go in the top 5. Our condolences to Blake Mill. but you know Blake's out on the recruiting trail.
And congratulations.
Those guys already. Yeah, I mean, he's done a terrific job developing those guys in recent years. We're seeing a lot of defensive linemen go in this draft. 7 defensive linemen gone so far. A number of offensive linemen in the first round, which is a little more traditional for me personally. Surprised that there wasn't the full run on red shirts through the second round of that draft that I think a lot of people anticipated, knowing that Ottawa was going to be picking those guys.
All right, let's go around the horn then, guys. Winners, losers, no trades Paul LaPolice made. Were you surprised?
Well, you know, the point I want to make is I think people have to understanding the NFL draft is different than this draft. I think this draft is a lot more developmental. So you have to be in a position to take some guys and let them develop to become great players. You often don't get guys stepping right in.
Well, look, to all the players that got drafted and are about to be drafted, remember this. This is a 4-part process. You got drafted. Your next goal is you have to make the team. And then you have to be a contributor. And then after you be a contributor, you got to be a starter. It's a 4-part process. This is only step number 1. Last word to you, Dwayne.
Well, first of all, best of luck to all of these young guys as they start their careers, and congratulations on embarking on this new journey. For some of us, we're staying here to do rounds 3 through 7, and looking forward to that because there are some potential future stars in there as well.
And probably some deals that will be made very shortly. Again, congratulations to Ottawa as well. We're starting to get the first snippets of what that Ottawa Red-Black franchise is going to look like. Thank the commissioner. Thanks to Mark Cohan and the CFL. Again, quite a day for a lot of players. 60 players to be chosen. Will be on TSN.ca coming up next. We'll stream it through, and a lot of names waiting to be selected. As Chris Schultz so eloquently put it, you know, this is the dream, to hear your name. Lyndon Gaydosh is going to go have a beer tonight, but guess what? Celebrate tonight, boys. Get ready to go to work tomorrow.
Ready to go to work tomorrow.
The dream only materializes if you play in the Canadian Football League. What a great start, though. Thanks to everyone here. We'll see you over on tsn.ca. You've been watching the 2013 CFL Draft. Can't wait.